So for the last section of this video, I want to get into why then should we think outside of the box? Because I think everything I've said up until now almost kind of diminishes the value of it. It's kind of making it out to be less impressive than it may have once seemed. But honestly, I don't see it that way. Even if it is less creative, does not make it any less valuable. If anything, I think it takes more talent to be within that safe little patch just outside of the box. But I will say it's less of a creative thing then and more of a calculated thing. And that is why I think it's teachable and that you can learn to do this better. But with any of those things then, I think you need to be grounded and have reasons to do so. And anyways, I'll get into them. So the first reason you might want to think outside the box is a vain one. We want to be regarded as brilliant or creative. As I mentioned before, people generally look at this type of thing as a positive thing and a commendable thing, something that needs to be complimented and highlighted. And for some people, that's what they crave. They thrive off of that sort of attention. And for those people, I will even more adamantly say, play just outside of the box, not within it and not completely far away from it. For people who want to be known as an artist or ahead of their time, I would be wary of the possibility of being fake, of trying to adopt an artist persona. And this kind of goes back to that thinking outside the box just for the sake of thinking outside of the box. I think what it can result in is overcompensation, to don a mantle that doesn't necessarily suit you or fit you. And if you're doing that, what can come across is overcompensation, or you're trying too hard, or just too weird. It's way too far from the box, because what you're trying to do is taking too many steps to appear as some creative genius and nobody understands. For some people, obviously, this may be true. This might be an authentic thing, and I'll get into that in the next point. Something to consider. Number 3, we just want to be snarky and just send a big fuck you to whoever is expecting our work or our thoughts to align with conventions and to, play within their boundaries. And obviously for this one, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just go shooting straight away from the box. Do not play anywhere near it. Just go really far-fetched and out there. Be offensive. Number 4 is a more practical one. Let's say you have a client for your creative work and they want something that is fresh and creative and new and pushing boundaries, but you know that they know that you kind of know that they know that they're not comfortable with veering too far away from the box. They don't want to be pioneers or do things in a completely new way. They still want to play it safe and focus on sales and make sure that there is a successful creative product at the end of this thing. So this one, again, you're just very close to the perimeter of that box, if not one step inside rather than outside. I'm thinking like, instead of the first man to walk on the moon, you're the first man to walk on the moon with 2 socks on. Like something that can be argued as creative and different and new, but really in essence is not. And finally, we're getting back to that point of that artist persona thing. Number 5, the main reason you might want to think outside of the box is not to impress anybody and not to adopt anything, gain the trust of a client or anybody in your network. It just might be who you are. It might be wholly and entirely, completely you. You're just trying to desperately be you in this world, and there's no other way to do that other than to think the way you do. And it just so happens to be outside of the box. So there are 3 kind of cases that come to mind with this. The first person I'm reminded of is my friend Jackie, who was on my podcast. Inside his head, he combines art and science. And from what I gathered, the reason for that is because inside of his head is a natural pairing. They're intertwined, and it makes sense to think of them as the art of science or the science of art. It's a very close relationship. For him as an individual with his interests and I guess career pursuits, both art and science are part of who he is and what he does. So for him to adopt that mindset of combining the two is arguably novel, but also it's just arguably him. And number 2, I'm reminded of a friend that committed suicide a couple of years ago. They were a social disaster and were anything besides predictable. Testament to that would be the fact that they had the happiest of dinners the night that they took their own life. For this individual, they were viewed as a genius. And honestly, I agree. I can see those traits and why they were labeled as that and why people perceived them as that. And more significantly, when I saw them, I didn't see a mask or a facade or trying to fit the role of a genius. I saw somebody that was genuinely confused and disturbed, perturbed by the world, and really struggled to navigate within it. Their personality was outside of the box, just by nature. It wasn't a mantle that they're trying to put on. It wasn't an act in order to gain anything. If anything, they lost everything from it. And that is why I think it's very important to make that distinction between thinking outside of the box as a commendable thing, and for people that naturally the way they think and operate is outside of that box. To that friend, rest in peace, and I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you in time. And number 3, the person that comes to mind is me. For me, I've always just hated the thought of being mundane. Growing up as Korean Canadian, again, applying my kind of cultural background here, there's that big emphasis on becoming a lawyer, becoming a doctor, becoming something that's stable and talented creatively on the side, but not as your main thing. But for me, thinking of life as a lawyer or doctor at that age was something completely unacceptable for me. I thought it was super mundane and boring. I have no idea what the field is actually like. I'm very sure and fairly certain that it's not mundane and boring based on the people that I've talked to. But for me, that was kind of the way I process things. It was not the fact that it was lawyer or doctor, blah, blah. It's the fact that I don't want to be living inside of this world of expectation. So for a period of time in my younger days, I saw the world and people and everything as just shades of color. And gray was the worst place to be. I did not want to be anywhere near gray, blah, blah. So for me, it was about not wanting to follow another person's footsteps. It's not being told what to do and how to think. I didn't want to be compared to anybody else. I didn't want to be anybody else. But that being said, I also didn't want to be a pioneer. I didn't want to be touted as super creative or like, oh, he's different and blah, blah. I just wanted to be me and uniquely me and only me, essentially. And that's why, like, even today, I'm very reserved when it comes to media consumption or self-help consumption or books written by other people or things like trends and stuff like that. It's just because I really don't want it, and it's weird. It's totally an ego thing, but I want to be as closely as possible to be completely comprised of my own genuine thoughts that sprout from my own genuine experiences. And yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. So for me, thinking outside of the box has not been a very great thing. But I mean, I was much more gung-ho about this type of stuff when I was younger. Nowadays, I'm a little bit more reserved about it and like relaxed about it, but the foundation's there. And again, I think that's why for me, this idea of thinking outside the box as a commendable thing makes me want to redefine it in that sense of you're thinking just outside the box, because that's when it's a positive experience for you as well, and why you should learn those types of skills and use them, because anywhere further than that, I don't think it's a very pleasant experience. There are definitely points in my life that people have complimented me as creative and thinking differently, and that's probably when I coincided with that little area right outside the box. But then anything beyond that, it was kind of just like, okay, buddy, just calm down. You're not like a great artist or anything. And that to me was so offensive because I never made it a point to try to be creative or artist. I hate the terms. I hate the labels. It's just like, I'm just trying to be me, buddy. Anyways, thank you for listening if you made it this far. Hopefully that provides some sort of insight or new ways of thinking or just practical tips on how to think outside of the box and apply it to your own life and kind of the things to be careful of and wary of. If you have any questions, want to follow up or have a discussion about this topic, please feel free to reach out to me. If you have ideas for future videos and just topics that you want my opinions on, these are fun for me just to map out how I think about something. Please suggest those as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody who has shown support. Bye-bye.